Good evening. Welcome to the January 20th, 2015 Planning and Zoning meeting. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, then a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If we could please have roll call from left to right.
Anthony Sutton.
John Grant.
Jean Servine.
Edward Mead.
Carl Moore.
Tom Nickel. Tom Panzella.
Jim Quish.
And I am Ben Gettinger. Also present are David Sulkis, City Planner, and Phyllis Leggett, Board Clerk. The first item on the agenda is executive session, discussion of pending litigation, Bella Properties Milford LLC versus Milford Planning and Zoning, 1556 New Haven Avenue. The City Attorney, John Burcham, is here, and we invite staff to come in. Would anyone like to make a motion? Ms. Servine. Having a motion and a second, any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we're back on the record, and for the record, Commissioner Michael Dolan is now present. We have a full board. The next item on the agenda is requests for CGS 8-24 approval, Mayor's Capital Improvement Plan 215 through 2019. I spoke to the Mayor's office. Nobody from the office will be here today. He respectfully requests that we advance, preferably he'd like us to approve the improvement plan, but if we don't, to deny it because it needs to go to the Board of Aldermen for their next meeting in order to get the proper bonding. So if anyone has any comments, questions, suggestions, you can make them. Servine.
Historically, we have moved these forward and approved them, and I know in reviewing it myself, I didn't have any questions, and I think the appropriate thing might be just to, and I will make the motion to go ahead and approve it.
Having a motion, do we have a second? Mr. Quish, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Anyone against? The motion to recommend the plan passes. The next item on the agenda is new business, 81 Shell Avenue, Zone R-7.5. Petition of David Salerno for Coastal Area Management Site Plan Review Approval to construct a single-family residence on map 27, block 444, parcel 3, of which Rodney Allen Revocable Trust is the owner.
Good evening. My name is Dave Salerno from Compass Builders, and just here representing Mr. Elaine as we go to before you gentlemen for review of the CAM application. We got a side yard setback variance a while back, and now we're just getting ready to start the renovation upon approval. We've gone through the necessary departments to get their advice about building, about the the rain gardens to help with the water control. We've also raised the house above the flood zone standards. The flood zone standards are at 13. We are actually going to build it to 17 to take into consideration the insurance rates and take into consideration the redesign of the flood maps over the years as the increases. We've also made the house a smaller house to fit on the property, and we've adhered to everything with the foundation and the rest of those details. That's about it. Any questions?
Thank you. Any comments from staff?
I have the report of the reviewing officer, which was Stephen Harris. According to his report, the application is incomplete. We do not have the engineering report. We do not have the report from Public Works. We do not have the report from the fire department. A signed and stamped site plan, a signed and stamped foundation plan by an engineer, scaled elevation and floor plan shall be submitted to the Planning and Zoning Office prior to review and the issuance of any permit. Typically, we have those items per our regulations as part of the application. We do not have them yet.
Want to respond to that?
Please.
Okay. When we submitted the application, we submitted it to, Dave, how do you want me to address that?
Whatever it is you want to address, I'm just reading what the report is from Mr. Harris. The information, according to Mr. Harris, isn't there, so however you want to answer it, that's up to you.
Okay. When we submitted the report to head of Joe over at the land surveying, who's in charge of it all, Joe felt that what was needed at the time for a CAM application was actually a site plan and a elevation view. Stephen Harris was in disagreement with that there should be more involved, which is what Dave is referring to in his report prior to coming before the CAM review board. I don't see what he is mentioning there. I definitely think those should be conditions upon getting a permit, but that's where the conflicting issues are, is that Joe, who's in charge of the whole department, disagrees with Stephen on the ruling of the CAM report. So all the application that I have in front of me is exactly what Joe had requested, which is elevations, site plans, addressing it all. We have DEP comments that are on here. We have Gary Wassmer's comments that are on here, and we do have a fire marshal's review that it was sent over to Stephen, and Stephen did reply. So I definitely don't have a problem taking all of those comments and putting that as a condition of the approval that needs to be considered prior to. I just didn't want to get into a difficult situation. I don't want to get into, the talking of one about the other. And that's why I asked Dave how he wanted me to answer that question.
So what are you suggesting we do in terms of making it a condition
I'm saying
of
that
approval?
all the conditions that Dave has on there, I think that should be a condition of approval. That Dave has that, okay, Dave, you're approved for, Dave Salerno, you're approved for your CAM report upon approval from whatever Dave's saying that Stephen Harris wants. Foundation approved, Dave says fire department, Dave also mentions Public Works, et cetera. I don't have a problem with any of those conditions being based on the approval of tonight, because that has to be done prior to me doing the building permit anyway, which is the reason I believe Joe is trying to streamline the process, because we have to go through that anyway to get the permit to build the home.
So question for staff, could we do something like that? Say it's approved, but it needs a favorable engineering report, inlands and wetlands report, or do we?
You could. Your regulations also specify that there's supposed to be a foundation, foundation drawings and floor plans that are in there. So, I mean, you can approve it, conditioned on all those things being submitted. But then, who's going to make the determination that it's to your satisfaction?
I have those reports, Dave. I have the foundation all done. I was just told that it wasn't necessary. I have them with me tonight if need be. However, again, with the foundation permit, you're talking about something that's been reviewed by the Department of Environmental Protection, has already given us his blessing upon that part of the report. John Goucher gave us that blessing, and it's very particular how the foundation was done in the 2x2 piers to make sure that the water flows through, the fragility, all of the foundation, all that stuff is have. It just was not asked to be submitted based upon what Joe felt was needed at a CAM application.
Again, it's a problem because you had one person, reviewing it and someone else telling someone what they think, how it should be reviewed and not reviewed. So I'll just leave it to you, whatever it is you want it.
Dave, not to be disrespectful at all, because I have utmost respect for the zoning department. I deal with the zoning department many times, but to kind of come tonight and get blindsided by all those things that you're just saying there is not really showing too much respect for us as builders to do something like that. I don't agree with it, especially since you were there when I submitted the application. So it wasn't as if there wasn't a comment that could have been made to me at that time to address these concerns.
With all due respect to you, Dave, I didn't have anything to do with your application. I'm just reading the report that was put into the file, which Mr. Harris submitted last week. It has been in the file, as far as I know, since last week. I'm just reading from his report. So, you know, if there is a conflict between you, Mr. Harris, and Mr. Griffith over it, I really have no comment about that other than I'm just reporting what's in the file. That's all I can do because it wasn't my application. You know, Mr. Harris should have perhaps been here this evening, but he was told not to come to these meetings. So the best I can do is tell you what's in the file.
Well, I could tell you, Mr. Harris and myself, we have a very good relationship. We sat down and went over this project, foundation and all together in his office. It just was the decision of his boss that it didn't need to be submitted at this time. If that needs to be revisited, I think that's fine for, future, but I don't feel that tonight I should be denied based on that. I don't have a problem, again, putting it all in the approvals. It all should be considered, but it all also was considered already. So I don't feel I should be denied based on those reasons. And again, I've dealt with you guys for years, so I have the utmost respect for you guys. I just feel like I'm getting caught in the middle on this one.
Mr. Mead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to make a comment on this proposal. Unless we have Mr. Harris here to verify the information that you just said, I think the board should have the set of plans and all the sign-offs so that we can see it. Either we have the sign-offs and all the paperwork, or we have Mr. Harris here to verify everything that you said.
So based on what you're saying, why couldn't we make that a condition of approval? It has to be Mr. Harris. See, again, I'm getting punished for something that I had already.
Well, excuse me, Mr. Griffith is here, and it looks like he wants to speak. Why not?
Joe Griffith, the Director of Permitting and Land Use. I was part of these discussions and reviewing the initial application that Mr. Salerno brought in. And specifically regarding the review of specific architectural systems that are getting reviewed for a permit under the building code. Our office has been under, I'll say, increased scrutiny from the Department of Environmental and Energy Protection as well as from FEMA. And it's my intent to make sure that when our office conducts a review of these systems as are required by the NFIP, that it's being done comprehensively and completely. So when we are reviewing a foundation plan, obviously the foundation is supporting the structure above, and so it can't be done in isolation. That entire structure has to be analyzed. Engineering reports as necessary have to be submitted, and they have to be reviewed by someone who's licensed by the state to review these systems. And that's where it's the approach of our office, the procedure of our office, to receive the foundation plans as well as the rest of the architectural drawings, complete with structural details as necessary, and review them completely and comprehensively, and issue the permit accordingly. And so that's why I've asked Stephen to please not go into the level of scrutiny and detail of just the foundation plans when we're going through the CAM reviews. The CAM reviews are looking for the compatibility of the use on that site. Mr. Goucher's review very eloquently came back with review of compliance with the FEMA requirements for the NFIP. And I believe you've addressed those. But as part of our review for building permit, that's when we're going to go through the foundation systems and go through the review of the entire structure. That's our approach to the submission for the CAM reviews. Thank you.
Mr. Mead? Mr. Reed?
That sounds very good, but in the future, maybe we should have been notified that that was going to be the new procedure? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is we all need to be on the same page as a board, as the zoning department planning. We can't have these happen in the meetings where, one person that's knowledgeable telling us one thing and another person that's knowledgeable telling us another thing. I mean, not only is the applicant in the middle of whatever's going on, but so's the board. So I apologize to the applicant and to your clients, but I think it would be prudent for us as a board just to carry this over 2 weeks to the extent we can, as a board, demand that we work with you to make sure that we have everything at the next meeting so we could just go on the merits instead of trying to figure out what's going on. So again, I apologize, but I don't think, we could go forward with arguably an incomplete application, maybe not, but
My question is what he brought up is a very valid point. You guys really aren't trained in how to answer whether a foundation is correctly done for coastal area, for building on a floods area, which is a special type of foundation. So what he is saying is 100% correct, which is why I'm saying let's put it on the approval. He's right. It's not only going to get analyzed by zoning, it's going to get analyzed by John Goucher, it's going to get analyzed by building. When it goes through the process, it's not really a zoning board to understand that, which is the only thing that's really missing. Gary Wassmer's already made his comments, the engineering department. John Goucher's made his. We've already put those into it, and we're only talking about foundation. So for me to be delayed 2 weeks when I have foundation plans, could have submitted them, I don't necessarily agree with you. Again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I just feel like I'm being punished for something that I think Mr. Griffith is 100% correct in what he's saying is that, you guys as zoning, they do a great job analyzing it. But for a zoning board to look at whether a foundation is conducive with the flood requirements is kind of tough on you guys since there's so many regulations and so many things changing.
well, again, I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong. I'm just saying as a board, we need a unified answer into what needs to be before us in order to make a vote. And we have conflicting opinions, so.
I agree with you on that part, but can't we just make these a part of the approval on this one? I don't see, again, has to be done, A, B, C, D, what Dave said, all has to be considered, so I don't have to lose the 2 weeks of starting the project. I'm still gonna do everything that I'm asked to do. I'm not gonna sidestep anything. You could see by I have elevations here, if you guys wanna see the foundation, I have, everything before you to get approval.
Dave, do you have the engineer's report?
Yes, sir.
Gary Wassmer's report?
No, Gary Wassmer's comments were integrated into the plan itself. So he talked directly with Joe Codispoti. He wanted the rain garden tweaked, and we tweaked the rain garden for water, the 1-inch overflow off the roof and things of that sort. The fire marshal also has the approval that was sent over too.
Well, just to let you know, every application that comes before this board, whether it's a CAM, a site plan, special permit, special exception, we always have in the file before you come before this board a report from all those departments. So we do not have in the file the engineering report, we do not have in the file the fire department's report, and we do not have the public works report.
It was sent over, Dave.
We do have the fire department's report.
Well, that's good. This says it's not here, so I don't know what to tell you.
Came in after the summary was read.
And Gary, I didn't have Gary give the comments because we weren't basing it on a foundation. So Gary has approved the project already have sign-ups. I stopped in his office and went over and discussed it. So basically, we knew about the rain gardens and what we had to do with it. But since it was not a part of tonight, why pressure him when he has enough things going on his plate? So
Gary always gives us a report for anything that comes before the board. So, I would like, from my perspective, I would like to believe that what you're saying is true, but that would be, we never have applications where there's engineering issues without the engineer actually confirming what you've said.
Okay. What about, can't you make it a condition on approval then? You have to have an engineering report. I'm just saying, I'm caught in the middle, Dave, and on this situation, and to lose 2 more weeks based on being caught in the middle, that's the only part that's disappointing to me. I understand. I understand that Joe's changing the process, trying to streamline things that wasn't communicated. I'm saying, fine, make all those my list of my approvals. I have no problems taking care of all those issues, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's the only thing I'm arguing with, is not being forced to lose 2 weeks with this weather because of, being caught in the middle, if you want to call it whatever you want to call it.
Ms. Servine.
I'll back up our chair here, and I think we all feel bad about this happening in this way. It's unfortunate this being played out in this manner, and we know I'm concerned about the autonomy and authority of this board, and I think that we would be setting a bad precedent if we did go ahead and approve this in this way. As much as I feel for your position, we're all caught in something here, and it's very unfortunate, but I hope it can get cleared up so we all know what the appropriate, if changing procedure is, and we can maintain our authority as a planning and zoning board.
Respect that. What would be the drawback to having all the conditions to have to be met because of, that's what I'm getting caught off guard with.
I'm not comfortable really carrying on this discussion any farther, but I think we need information in front of us so that we can see it in black and white, period.
Okay.
If that precedent changes, then we'll deal with that, but so far, that hasn't changed, and that's been historically the process that we go through in terms of approval.
Okay, so me having engineered drawings of the foundation now wouldn't help me at all?
Just not comfortable carrying this on any farther, so I've said what I need to say.
Again, you know, it's embarrassing. I apologize. I will do my best to make sure that your next meeting, you're on the agenda, and we could get it hopefully approved, but there's two conflicting opinions, and we just don't want to make the wrong decision without
Thank
having
you,
the
guys.
full picture. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
The next item on the agenda is request for bond reduction, 284, 286 Naugatuck Avenue. Request by Warren K. Field Jr. for a subdivision bond reduction of $14,200 from $16,000, leaving a maintenance balance in the amount of $1,800 in accordance with the memo from Chris Saley, Public Works Director, dated January 6, 2015. Well, having many of these now before the board, I see no reason to have a lengthy discussion. I move to approve. Having a motion and a second, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is public hearing closed by 2/24/15, expire on 4/30/15. Petition of Mark Pucci for special permit and coastal site plan review approval to construct a single-family residence within 25 feet of high tide on map 30, block 642, parcel 1, of which Dr. and Mr. Hoos are the owners.
Good evening, Board. My name is Mark Pusey, and I'm here for coastal area management approval and special permit for 103 Point Beach Drive. Board, I have the recommendation for approval by the Fire Marshal's Office, Public Works Director, the City Engineer, as well as John Goucher at the DEP. This is for a new home. The previous home was destroyed by Hurricane Sandy. There are no variances. The house is being built within the zoning setbacks and regulations. I believe everyone has a copy of the CAM report and blueprints, engineering. Reason for the special permit is we're building within 25 feet of the high tide mark, and it's in the VE zone. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from staff?
I'm almost afraid to comment. The Mr. Harris's report says that there is an indication on the transmittal sheet that the fire department submitted a report dated 12/11/14, but it's not in the file. Again, in this case, just like in the last one, a signed and stamped site plan, a signed and stamped foundation plan by an engineer, and scaled elevations and floor plan shall be submitted to planning and zoning prior to going to the building department for review and issuance of any permits. So those items weren't made part of the CAM application.
Well, my application included all those items, David. I've submitted all that.
Okay, I'm just, again,
yeah.
I didn't work on your application. I'm just reading from Mr. Harris's report.
And the board, you should have, everyone should have a copy of any of those items.
I do see in the file, there's floor plans, there's elevations.
I mean, I have the fire department letter here, if anyone would like it, you want me to
Might as well,
present it to you? Okay.
please. Any questions from the board?
Is the file complete? I'm not sure I'm getting the right.
It appears to be complete, yes.
And just remember, it's also a public hearing, so it's not, yeah.
Still, any questions from the board? Hearing none, we will open this up for the public hearing portion. Before I read the procedure, is anyone here to oppose or support the application? Seeing nobody, I will not read the procedures. Any final questions from the board? Seeing none, would anyone like to make a motion? Mr. Quish?
I'd move to approve as submitted.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Anyone against? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next item on the agenda is 460 Bick Drive, Zone OD, petition of Garden Homes Management Corporation for special permit and site plan review approval to construct a 257-unit residential development under CGS Section 80-30G on map 41, block 301, parcel 29, of which Garden Homes Residential LP is the owner.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Just for the record, my name is Thomas Lynch. I'm an attorney here in Milford with offices located at 63 Cherry Street. And I'm here tonight with my client, Richard Friedman, who's seated with me in the front row here. Richard is the president of Garden Homes Management Corporation, the applicant with plans to present to you tonight for the construction and development of a 257-unit residential development filed under the auspices and the guidelines of Section 8-30G of our Connecticut statutes at the property which he and his affiliated entity, Garden Homes Residential LP, owns at 460 Bick Drive. Also with me tonight is Steve Trinkus. Steve is a land engineer from Southbury who's put together the site plan that we're going to be presenting to you tonight. I also have with me tonight Andrew Hennessy. Andrew is an architect from Newburgh, New York, who has put together the floor plans and the elevations that he'll be going over with you as part of the application. And then lastly, I have with us tonight Bruce Hilson, who's a traffic engineer from Glastonbury, who has put together a traffic report, which is part of the application that was submitted, and he will be going through the details of that to you. So I wanted to start tonight's discussion with how we got here, how I'm standing here before you tonight. This matter is not a new application. It is actually a hearing on the application that we filed back in May of last year, which was reviewed. The plans were completely reviewed by all departments. Department memos were submitted, and I think that Phyllis actually had this just about ready to be set down for a public hearing in June. But lo and behold, as we all know, in May of last year, the State Budget Act, Public Act 14217, had buried deep within it in Section 122 of the Act a provision that allowed for a moratorium to go into effect, affecting communities whose affordable housing stock exceeded 6% of the town's inventory, but was less than 10% of the town's inventory. And coincidentally enough, Milford met that standard. So as a result of the passage and the signing of that bill by the governor, in effect, that put the kibosh on this board entertaining any other 8-30G applications for the duration of 2014. We took issue with that bill. We filed, after this board formalized their action to not accept the application in July of last year. You, in fact, voted to deny the application that we had submitted without prejudice, and we filed an action appealing your decision under Section 8-8 of the General Statutes in Superior Court. The way that these types of cases work through the court system on appeals of affordable housing cases, the cases are transferred to the land use court, which is in Hartford, and Marshall Berger is a Superior Court judge who is the administrative judge of that court. And your legal counsel, Matthew Woods, and I met on, I think September 15th it was, by way of a telephone conference with Judge Berger, and there was a discussion on the legal merits of the case. We had filed the appeal challenging Section 122 of the Public Act, saying that it was unconstitutional. We raised certain constitutional arguments relative to the fact that the moratorium, in essence, created a situation of conflict between the legislature and the judiciary having the opportunity to actually review zoning cases. And we also raised issues relative to the fact that under 8-7 of our statutes, we felt that we had submitted an application that was entitled to be heard and should have been heard. Judge Berger, being the practical person that he is, said, well, gentlemen, those are all great legal issues, but by the time you brief the issues and appear before me and have a hearing on that, it could be the summer of 2015, and this so-called moratorium expires on 12/31 of 2014. How about if we work out a deal where the matter is brought back before the Milford Planning and Zoning Board in January after the moratorium terminated? Attorney Woods and I felt that that was a fair resolution of the case, and that's how we're here tonight. As soon as the moratorium terminated in December, David was instructed, or for lack of a better word, told of the outcome of this discussion, and it was then agended for tonight's public hearing. So that's where we are. This is not a new application. This is a hearing on the application that we filed back in 2014. So I really want to be clear on that, and we're happy to appear before you tonight. The other professionals that are here with me are happy to get up and go through the site plan, go through the details of the building, and tell you how we think that this is a great project, and we think that it's an appropriate project for the site where it's located, and we think that it meets the standards of Section 830G of our statutes, encouraging towns to develop affordable housing. So that's, again, how we're here tonight. Just by way of background on this property, those of us, such as myself, who've lived here in Milford our whole lives, we've seen a great deal of change in that area. Back in the 60s, that was all farmland. Schoolhouse Road extended down to Caswell Street. Caswell Street ran down to Caswell Cove, and it was all country farmland that was then developed during the 60s, and the start of that development was through the big corporation in France deciding that they wanted to build a very large facility in the city of Milford, Connecticut, and lo and behold, the plant was built in the 60s into the early 70s, and at one time there were 1,500 people working in that plant on 3 shifts. And this particular piece of property was sold by the Smith family. Louise and Winthrop Smith Sr. were the owners. We all know, or many of us are well familiar with their 3 sons, who are businessmen here in Milford. Frosty runs the real estate business, and Winthrop runs the funeral home, and Dan runs the insurance business. But it was their parents' farm, and what happened was the property was sold to BIC as part of their accumulation of land to build the plant, and the Smiths retained what was known as a life use, so that they transferred title to their farm to BIC. They were allowed to have the use of the property as their residence. It had a large colonial structure on it. It had a couple of outbuildings. It also had a very nice tennis court where I played tennis many, many years on that property. So it really had some good history. And what happened then in the 1990s is that the big corporation had a change of plan. They wanted to relocate their facilities to South Carolina. They wanted to retain a small presence here in Connecticut, and as we all know, they have their location over in Shelton, where they employ production workers working on, I think, the lighter business, but in essence, the pen and the shaving business was sent out of Milford. So the corporation actually had their plans to build the corporate headquarters on this 8-acre site, and when that went away, the property was left vacant, and Richard bought the property just a couple of years ago, put together these plans, and we're submitting them to you tonight. But in conjunction with the big plant going on to the lower portion of the land there with Caswell Street and Schoolhouse Road, it's very interesting, the infrastructure, which creates a situation today that it allows the development of this property for a 257 residential unit site. That infrastructure was created back in the 60s. Again, with 1,500 people working in that plant. Schoolhouse Road was turned to Bick Drive. A 50-foot wide road was constructed from Route 1 all the way back to the plant. And now, as we're sitting here in 2015, and with this particular piece of property being located where it is, I think it lends itself to a very appropriate site for such a large-scale residential development. It's elevated from the intersection of Bick Drive and Naugatuck Avenue. Recently, the blinking light that was located at Bick Drive and Naugatuck is now a full-fledged signal, so that that's a change over the last couple of years. But the topography of the land, it's being elevated where it is and separated from the other residential areas heading out towards West Rutland Road or towards Naugatuck Gardens, really isolates it from the other residential areas. And again, Bruce is going to be getting into talking about the traffic, but the natural flow of traffic from this property, we believe, is going to come to the intersection of Bick Drive and Naugatuck and continue out on Bick Drive to Interstate 95 and Route 1, where the residences will go to work, they'll go do their shopping. I dare say, unless somebody's going for a Sunday drive, that there's going to be very few people that are going to come out of this site, come to that light, and take a left-hand turn to go into the residential area of West Rutland Road, or take a right to head into the other residential area of Naugatuck Gardens. That's really been set up, again, by the infrastructure that really dates back to the 60s when the big plant was developed. Now, I also wanted to make specific reference, I should have done this, Mr. Chairman, at the outset. We put together a very detailed handout that I think each of you should have, but I just want to make it clear that I want this to be submitted for the record, because I'm going to be making reference to it through the course of the evening. So at least one of the copies I'd like to have stamped and made part of the record.
We could stamp mine and we'll make
Okay,
it part
that's
of the
great,
record.
Ben. Yeah, we had left these things, with all respect to Phyllis, we left these things back in May, and they get put in boxes, and I think she didn't even realize that that was part of what we had dropped off. So right at the outset, I'd like to have that submitted, and I thank you for stamping that as a exhibit to be made part of the record. So on page 2 of this handout, we've basically gone into a very brief overview of what we're doing here. The property is 8 acres in size. There's going to be a 4-story elevated building with 257 units. The unit breakdown is 194 one-bedroom units and 63 studio units. As I said, the property is also located in the office design zone, or OD zone, so that this is a zone under which residential development can take place under 8-30G. You cannot do residential developments in industrial zones, but in this particular zone, a residential development under 830G is permitted. I'm not going to go into any greater detail than that, and Steve and Andrew are going to go into layout of the building, but I just wanted to highlight on that page also the fact that there's some 322 parking spaces that are allowed or as are shown on these plans, and as we get into the police department review in just a few minutes, that creates a ratio of 1.25 spaces per unit. There is additional land, if necessary, where another 42 spaces could be built to create a total of 361 parking spaces on this property. So there's plenty of property to lay out the parking for here. There's a portion underneath the H-shaped building, but there's other, as shown on the site plan, other parking that's provided on site that greatly exceeds what we feel is the need. But again, under 830G, we're not bound by the zoning regulations, but this ratio really does meet what our zoning standards call for. And again, as I said, this is filed under Section 830G of our statutes. We've had other applications that we've presented to you, so I'm not going to belabor the point, but you know the operation of this statute. Absent a finding of some public health or safety issue that outweighs the stated goal of the state to have towns or encourage towns to develop affordable housing, these applications are to be approved. And I don't look at that in a sense, or I don't stress it to you in a sense where it's, you know, you're blackmailed by the statute. I don't look at it that way. I look at it that the statute provides a mechanism to allow towns to build housing that is not low income, it's affordable. And if you go to page 11 to 14 of our handout, it shows the breakdown under our affordability plan of the type of individuals that are going to be renting these units. They're young professionals. They're all studio apartments or one-bedroom apartments. So they're going to be occupied not by families. There's not going to be children in these buildings. They're going to be young professionals. And on page 11, for the income guideline for those who want to rent a studio apartment and whose income meets 60% of the statewide median, that means somebody who's earning $36,288 a year. If somebody qualifies to rent one of the studio units and their income is 80% of the statewide, their income guideline is $48,384. So that is for a studio apartment. Individuals earning $36,000 or $48,000 a year. Hardly low income. The next two pages show the one-bedroom computations, and again, the 60% statewide median qualifying income is $38,880, and the 80% qualifying income is $51,840. So these are going to be young professionals. These are going to be people that are getting their first jobs, they're coming out of college, or they're working at Sikorsky or one of the other area facilities. And this provides affordable housing, not low-income housing, and that's something that we really stress in these applications to you. And it's a goal that's a desirable goal. It's not something that, you know, I look at these applications as mechanisms for a developer to come in and try to ramrod something. It's a desired goal of the state, and this project meets that goal. One of the other things that I wanted to highlight before turning things over to Steve is the last section of our handout Again, I'm not going to read into great detail, and that's why I've left a copy of of this handout for each of you to take with you. But each year, the City of Milford has to put together an application to the Department of Housing and Urban Development as part of the town receiving their block grant funds. And last year, Milford received $434,000 from HUD in block grant funds, funds that go into our general coffers and are used as part of the funding of the operation of the city. And as you can see on these applications that we've made copies of, throughout these applications, whether it was Mayor Riccitelli in the 2010 application or Mayor Blake in last year's application, the comments are made replete throughout that the town is taking steps, the town is encouraging the development of affordable housing. Well, that's why we're here tonight. We want to be part of that process, and it is part of the process in applying for those funds from HUD, and you know, this is in concert with 830G, and we feel that this is not only a good project, but it's an appropriate site for this kind of a development. The last thing that I wanted to touch on was the point that I made in terms of denying an application under the statute. You have to find that there's a public health or safety concern that outweighs the stated goal of encouraging affordable housing. Well, we have 3 departments here in this town that oversee our public health and safety. We have the police department, we have the fire department, and we have the sewer commission. And I invite you to read the reports that are in this handout from each of those departments. They all approved without any hesitation, without any reservation, this project. The police memo talked about the sight lines being adequate. The police memo commended the developer for having parking which met the zoning standards, even though we're not required to meet the zoning standards. The fire department memo, one-liner. This plan meets all of our standards. And then lastly, Richard and I met with the Sewer Commission last spring, and originally we had an application for 274 units based upon discussions of gallonage and different devices that were used to create water-saving mechanisms. We did agree to drop the unit number to 258 units, but the Sewer Commission, charged with the public health, approved the application for this project. So this project has received approval from each and every one of the town's departments that have reviewed it. I think that, again, we've done our due diligence. It's laid out in this handout, all of the materials necessary for you to review this and understand that based upon the topography, the elevated location of it, the infrastructure of the highway handling the traffic, that this is an appropriate site for this development. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Steve Trinkus, and he's going to go through the site plan with you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Steve Trinkus. I'm a consulting engineer from Southbury, Connecticut, and I prepared the site plans. The first plan I'd like to show you is a Google map image that shows the surrounding development.
Excuse me, sir, that microphone comes off if you want to.
You know, I'll just bend it over a little bit so I can hold the plan and talk. So we have Bick Drive, we have Naugatuck Avenue, the Bick facility, our site on the corner. So it gives you a surrounding view of the land use. As we go farther to the lower right-hand side of the plan, you actually see the beginning of the subway headquarters. It's off Bick Drive. So the site currently, as John pointed out, had some single-family houses on it, some outbuildings, the tennis court. They've been removed. The northern portion of the site is kind of lawn area. The remainder of the site is fairly open woods. It's not overly dense woods. There's a few large trees in it, but mostly it's smaller trees, 6 to 8 inches in size. Bigger easel, which will make life a lot easier. As part of the site investigation here for stormwater management, we did two different rounds of soil testing out here. We also did other soil testing for depth to bedrock. Your town engineer required us to address three aspects of stormwater: water quality volume per the DEP manual, the groundwater recharge volume, and the peak rate attenuation for a 25-year event, and I will get into that. Gary has approved that plan. The other unique feature of the site is we have the Algonquin gas line that comes along the western property line and then traverses the southern boundary of the site. Now, Algonquin does permit certain activities over the easement. They will allow parking, they will allow driveway, they will allow some filling, they will not allow cutting. While they stated that the pipe is generally 4 to 5 feet below grade, in some cases it may be less than that, so that's why they do not want any cuts in that area. They also did not want any retaining walls that might be within their easement in the event that they needed to access their line, that they would have to disturb a wall of something like that. They also have a very specific protocol that if you do any blasting on the site, it has to not only be done under the supervision of the fire marshal for the town of Milford, but also under their own department. And there will be some blasting on the western wing of the building. So this shows the H-shaped building, which Andrew will more explain. We have the entrance coming in the northwest corner of the site with parking along the western boundary, along the southern boundary, the eastern side of the building, and then back out to the front. There is a front drop-off zone with the primary entrance being right here. In the courtyard of the building, there is patio areas and a community pool for the apartment complex. We also have in the southern end of the site is a small basketball court and dog walk area. But we also left the entire southern corner of the site, which is wooded now, to remain wooded to provide a buffer to the single-family residence that is located at the bottom of the page here. So we have a full entrance coming in. We have the right turn coming out. The entrances were designed after meeting with the fire department to take your largest fire truck to get in and out, and we've shown the appropriate turning radiuses, and they can access all the way around the building. So the largest truck can come around either direction and go to the parking areas. The building utilizes underground parking because of the slope, and there's 3 entrance points at the 2 ends of the building, and at about the northern third of the eastern side of the building. This parking is all on grade as this is, but then because of the slope of the land, the parking underneath the building here matches the existing grade. And as John pointed out, there's 322 proposed spaces. There's 182 surface spaces outside the building. There's 140 under the building. And I'll show you a little bit the potential overflow parking. The stormwater management system consists of both conventional and low-impact concepts. For the parking area that's on the east side of the site, the grades go from the building to the east. There is a bioretention system along the slope there. The soils on the site were very, very sandy in nature, fairly good infiltration rates, so that'll be some of the water quality. There's also 2 sets of underground galleries on the bottom of the site here, and another one here, and a small detention pond on the eastern side right above Naugatuck Avenue. So we have the gallery system here. These are 4x4 galleries. They will be set just into the existing grade. We'll strip the topsoil and the loam out to get to the sandier material underneath. The bottom of the galleries, which are the infiltrative part of the system, will be set in that material. This area will be raised to get access into the parking, the underneath parking, and there is a retaining wall along the perimeter of the parking, but it is located outside the Algonquin easement, and Algonquin has been provided with these plans, and they had no objections. Their office is actually located about 3 miles from my office in Oxford. Drainage on the western side of the site is drained to catch basins into this gallery system. As I noted, we have the bioretention system here. This gallery actually comes across, goes into another gallery system as an overflow from bioretention does, and then it goes into a detention basin. And by being able to infiltrate not just the water quality volume, which is associated with 1 inch of rainfall, but for larger storm events, by the time we get to the detention basin, it's very small to provide basically a small amount of peak rate attenuation, so that the peak development of runoff for the 25-year event after this site is built is less than the current rate of runoff off the site. So we're in compliance with those applicable standards. We have a comprehensive erosion and sedimentation control plan that meets not only the town's regulations, but the 2002 DEP guidelines, which most towns reference in their land use regulations. John mentioned the overflow parking. There's 42 spaces that could be added along the northern limit of the parking. These were assumed to be paved, and the stormwater management system was designed to anticipate those 42 spaces being built in the future if necessary. So if we do not build those 42 spaces, the stormwater management is much more conservative than I previously stated. So we've looked at the worst case scenario of having 42 additional parking spaces being paved and going into the stormwater management system. So at this point, I will turn it over to Andrew so he can talk to you about the building itself, and I'm available for any questions.
Good evening. I'm Andrew Hennessy with Hennessy Architects out of Newburgh, New York. I'm the architect for the project. So what we have here is a 4-story apartment building over basement parking. The building is approximately 51,000 square feet per floor for a total of a little over 200,000, plus the garage level, the basement level. What you see here on the plan, this is the garage level plan. There are, let me just move over a little bit, point this out to you, 3 entrances, as Steve had mentioned to you, into the garage. Bick Drive is here, so the orientation is the same as the site plan. North is straight up. The plan will involve 4 elevators, which are located around the building, here and here, down in here, and another one here, and there's also 5 fire exit stairs serving each floor. Bring you up to the next level. This is the ground floor level. Again, Bick Drive is at the top of the page. The main building entrance is here. There's a canopy, and you would enter in. The amenity spaces for the residents are all located in this area. They're colored in blue. And they include a community room, which is about 936 square feet, which is located here. There's a movie screening room of 472 square feet. We have an exercise room of 1,300 plus square feet, and some restrooms and maintenance facilities. And this leads out to the pool and courtyard patio that was shown on the site plan. The remainder of the first floor are apartments, as well as the second, third, and fourth. There's a total of 257 apartments. 63 are studios, which range in size from a little over 500 square feet to about 550. There are 191 one-bedroom units, and they range in size from roughly 670 up to about 800. One other thing I forgot to mention, we're also providing areas in the garage for bike storage for the residents, just as a small side note. So the occupancy here is all residential R2, as designated under the building code, which will be over S2 parking, enclosed parking garage. So the construction of the basement and the first floor structure will be non-combustible steel and concrete. The remainder of the structure will be wood, which will actually protected wood. It's all fire protected wood. The building will have a full fire sprinkler system installed throughout, including the garage. It'll have a full fire alarm system with a control panel in the lobby area. We provide fire ratings between all units, both horizontally and vertically, as well as all corridors, stairs, and the parking areas, all contained in compartments and fire rated from each other. And as I mentioned before, there are 5 fire-rated stair enclosures that serve all the floors. The building is 100% handicap accessible. There are accessible parking spaces both on the surface as well as in the garage, and leading from those spaces into the building is an accessible route. 10% of the units will be designed to meet the Type A accessible unit criteria of the code, and the remainder of the units will be Type B accessible units as defined by the code. All the amenity spaces as well as the patio and pool area will all be fully accessible. Let me just show you quickly. This is what a typical apartment floor looks like. It's essentially identical to the first floor, except obviously the amenities don't reoccur on each floor. Going to the facades, this is the faces north, it's the north elevation which faces Bick Drive, the west elevation, east elevation, and the south elevation. You can see the garage entrances in those locations. The exterior materials are, excuse me, I lost my spot here. We started off with a brick base, which you can see is around the entire bottom of the building. This gives the building a substantial look as well as a durable base. The rest of the building will be done in siding. It's a fiber cement product. Many people know it as Hardy Plank. There's other brands out there, but it's essentially a concrete-based wood fiber product that's non-combustible. Now, there was one error on the elevation material. Number 3 was mistakenly called out on the plans that was submitted to you as metal panel, and that will actually be the same fiber cement siding product as the other siding, except it will be in panel form instead of lap siding form, as you see here, where this is more traditional lap siding. This will be done in panels. So the look will be the same. The color is essentially the same as what you see here. It's just the material designation in the chart was incorrect. The peaked roofs that you see here will have metal standing seam roofs on them. All the materials were chosen due to their durability, their fire resistance, as well as wind resistance. And they were selected all to give the building a residential scale. The interior is finished with all high-quality materials. We provide 9-foot ceilings throughout all the apartments. All the flooring in the apartment is ceramic tile. We use solid core doors with leather hardware, all wood base and trim. We do a full appliance package, including refrigerator, microwave, stove, and dishwasher. All the cabinets are custom made to fit the project, and we install granite countertops. All the showers will be one-piece stall type showers. There's no bathtubs planned for the job. The Type A accessible units will receive a transfer type of shower unit. We provide a shelving package for all the closets, as well as 42-inch upper cabinets to help with storage within the units. We also provide acoustic separation between the units, which includes sound partitions between all units and between the units and the corridors. And the floor systems are also insulated for sound as well as impact resistance. or impact noise, I should say. Security, the building entry doors remain locked, and we use electric hardware in conjunction with an intercom system and a card reader system to allow entry. Unit entry doors have deadbolts and steel frames. All units will have separate utilities, electric, phone, cable, and internet. The interior design and the energy efficiency measures we have been developing over a number of projects, and we continue to make them better. The building is highly energy efficient, and that's one of the goals of the developer. Pretty much all our thermal values are roughly double what the energy code requires. For instance, our exterior walls normally have an R value of 55. Our roofs average an R value of 60. And we pay a lot of attention to air sealing. The exterior siding is actually done in what's called a rain screen system, where there's a secondary drainage plane behind the siding. And that secondary plane is a weather barrier that gets sealed. We also use closed cell spray foam inside the wall cavity to additionally seal the building, as well as an interior vapor barrier that gets taped and sealed to all penetrations. The windows we use has an R value of 4.5. They're triple glazed units with low E coating and argon fill. We use efficient P-TAC unit heaters for heat, AC, and ventilation. Each tenant controls their own environment within their unit. We also use tankless water heaters, again in an effort to save energy. You're not heating water 24/7. It's instantaneous just when you need it. We also use low-flow plumbing fixtures and Energy Star appliances. So the goal here is to offer a high-end product at a modest price point. Are there any questions? Okay. That there.
Good evening. My name's Bruce Hilson. I'm a registered professional engineer specializing in traffic engineering, and I prepared this a traffic study on behalf of Garden Homes. This was submitted for the record. In doing the traffic study, we collected a lot of information on existing conditions, including traffic counts, field observations, and field measurements. The traffic counts included making turning movement counts during the morning and afternoon peak hours or peak periods at the intersection of Bick Drive and Naugatuck Avenue, Bick Drive and West Street, or West Avenue, which is at the lower right corner of the board, and Bick Drive at the I-95 ramps, which would be pretty much on the floor. We also made a 24-hour directional machine count on Bick Drive in the vicinity of the site. This count included a speed study to determine the 85th percentile speed of travel on Bick Drive. That speed, or those speeds were used to make sure that we had adequate sight distances for vehicles to safely enter and leave the site. We measured the width of the existing roadway, and with all that information, we then began to do some analyses. First thing we did was determine the number of trips that would be added to the roadway system by the proposed apartment units. the time we did the study, there were 284 units being proposed. That number has been pared down to 257, so the trip generation and the impact analyses pretty much overstate the impact that the development will have on the surrounding roadway system. We completed capacity analyses for the existing conditions, for the future conditions without the development, and the future conditions with the development. These were done for the morning and afternoon peak periods. And what we found is, with only a couple of exceptions, that traffic operations at the intersections that we studied, Bick Drive at Naugatuck Avenue, Bick Drive at West Avenue, and Bick Drive at the I-95 ramps, will all continue to operate at the same existing levels of service as they do today. Two exceptions to that. One is at the intersection of Bick Drive and West Avenue during the afternoon peak period, when the level of service will go from level of service B to level of service C. And let me just explain, levels of service go from A through F, A being the very best level of service, and F being level of service where there is delay that would cause vehicles to have to wait for a fair amount of time. The other location that we would have a change in operating level of service is vehicles making the right turn from the off-ramp, southbound off-ramp from 95 onto Bick Drive, and that would go from level of service C to level of service D when the trips associated with the project are added to the roadway system. We looked at the site distances available for drivers entering and leaving the site, and we found that they are greater than what's required for the 85th percentile speed of travel based upon the Connecticut DOT Highway Design Manual, and as agreed with by the police department when they did their analysis. We also looked at the need for widening Bick Drive to create a bypass so the vehicles could continue past, through vehicles could continue past vehicles turning left onto the site. What we found is that the existing width of the road, being more than 40 feet, more than 20 feet from the double yellow center line to the outside edge of the road, that these widths are more than appropriate to allow bypass of vehicles turning onto the site. So no roadway widening is required to allow for bypass at the site driveway. An application has been made to the Office of the State Traffic Administration for an administrative decision. They have done their review and they're awaiting for this commission to act upon the application and forward the decision to them before they formalize their findings. The roadways and intersections in the vicinity of the site will operate at levels of service that are presently experienced or at one level of service below existing conditions at those two locations that I indicated. No change in level of service will reduce traffic operations to below level of service D. Intersection site distances exceed the distances needed for drivers to determine when it is safe to enter and leave the site. Traffic operations and safety are not expected to be adversely impacted by the addition of the apartment units. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer questions upon completion of our presentation.
Thank you.
If you want to take questions now.
We wait to the end traditionally, so,
Fine,
thank you.
thank you.
Good evening. Thank you very much for your service and for hearing our application. My name is Richard Friedman. I'm the president of Garden Homes Management. We are a family real estate business based in Stamford. This commission, about 2.5 years ago, approved an 830G application from our firm on Cascade Boulevard. Thank you. That was for 36 units, 24 of which were studios and 12 were one-bedrooms. And it was conceptualized very similarly to this project, which is as a project of small, affordable units, but attractive units for primarily young people. So I just have a few basic statistics that I can share with you about our project on Cascade Boulevard, which was issued at CO in late June of 2014. The building, as I said, came online at the beginning of July. The entire building rented in about 8 weeks. So 36 units were rented in about 8 weeks. The median age of the tenants at Cascade Boulevard is 26. There is one child in the building, age 2. The affordable rents, which are obviously set by formula, vary from a low of $706 a month for a studio to what could be as much as $1143 a month for the higher affordable one-bedroom, except that that rent actually exceeds the market. And the market rents are $1,100 or $1,125 for a one-bedroom, and roughly $1,000 a month for a studio with a sleeping nook. And so those rents are below the higher affordable rents as specified in the affordability plan. So the building effectively, even though not all the units are obviously set aside as affordable, the building is effectively 100% affordable. And that was by design. That's the market that we're targeting, and that's the market that we're comfortable serving. So overall, the building is precisely what I represented to this commission that it would be. It's a building for young people. It's a building for generally single young people, but not all. This building is conceptualized very similarly, although obviously because it's larger, it has more amenities, and which you can support when you have more units. Andrew talked a little bit about the architecture and the skin. If you've been past the building on Cascade Boulevard, or if you go past it, the skin is very similar. The materials of the skin are actually identical. The color is not exactly the same, but the material on the outside of the building is the same. I think Cascade Boulevard certainly, by my perspective, and I think from a larger perspective, has been very appropriate. It's in an appropriate location, and I think it's filling, obviously, because it rented up so quickly. I think it's filling a very needed slice of the housing market in Milford. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that completes our presentation to you, and if the board has any questions at this time, feel free to direct them to whoever individual you want to get a response from.
Thank you. We'll start with staff. Any comments from staff?
Yeah, I'm just going to walk you through my staff report on this. Basically, the number of units, I'm not going to go through that. You heard the number of units, the number of parking spaces, and I'll get to that in a second. The interdepartmental comments were the following. The engineering department just wants the applicant to make some minor adjustments to the driveway aprons at the street. It's of a very minor nature. The Conservation Commission would like the applicant to come up with a plan to eradicate invasive species of plants that are found on the property on the undeveloped perimeter of the property. The Police Commission would like to see the installation of curbs and sidewalks along Bick Drive and Naugatuck Avenue. They would also like to see the alternative parking plan, which adds those 42 parking spaces along Bick Drive. And the Tree Commission would just like to see some species diversity. The current landscape plan has the same species of trees in various groupings around the property. They have no issue with the species that are being used, but the clumps should be of mixed species and not a single species. And then just to clarify something that's been made part of the record and was actually part of the police report, the police report does state that the parking amounts do comply with our zoning regulations. That actually is inaccurate. The police department used apparently one of our older sets of regulations, and if this was being compared to parking in the CDD1, the CDD2 or the downtown district, then the parking amounts would meet the regulations, specifically the 1 to 1.5 for the efficiency units. But outside of those two districts, it's a minimum 2 parking spaces for each type of unit, both the efficiency and the 1-bedrooms. Having said that, again, the application does not have to meet any of the regulations. They are providing, 1.25, by my estimation, about 1.25 spaces for each unit, which is most likely, adequate for the kinds of uses that they propose.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Mr. Nichols.
Yes, I have a few questions. I see on the plan, and I'm really interested in the reason that you cannot take a left turn out of that planned apartment complex on Bick Drive, and I'd like to know the reason for that.
Bruce Hilson for the record. The reason for restricting left turns leaving the site are twofold. One, in our estimation, there is likely going to be no one, if anyone, wanting to make a left turn leaving the site. The only thing down there is the land uses, industrial developments, et cetera. There's no egress to anything down there, so we believe everyone is going to desire to make the right turn. Secondly, when we did our sightline observations, looking to the right, coming up the hill from Naugatuck Avenue, the sight distance is limited because of the physical characteristic of the roadway. And as such, the sight distance does not meet the requirement as expressed in your zoning regulations that says we need to meet the DOT standards. So we determined that because no one would desire to make that left turn, we should configure the driveway to prohibit that left turn, and therefore assuring that our sight distances were safe and adequate.
So what you're telling me is that the possibility of anyone working at Bick or Schick or Subway down the street on the bottom of the hill, or wanting to visit in the Cascade or take their garbage to the dump is not going to happen?
What we're saying is that we expect virtually everyone to want to make the right turn, and we do not believe that it is appropriate to make the left turn, given the sight lines and the speeds of travel in that area.
While you're up there, sir,
Excuse me?
your traffic studies were all at these different intersections. I'm interested in how many vehicles climb the hill that's going past this proposed complex?
During the morning peak hour, we have about 260 vehicles coming up the hill. And in the afternoon peak hour, we have about 114 coming up the hill.
Do you think that equates to the amount of people that work at these other industries up and down the street, and that's the reason why we have so little traffic?
The volumes, the traffic counts were made between the hours of 7 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock in the morning, which is the standard period that counts are done for this type of development. And those are the traffic volumes that we observed or counted during the highest hour of that morning peak and afternoon.
Excuse me, sir, but I find that very hard to believe. Right across the street, you have Northeast Electronics, and I believe they have several hundred people working in there. I mean, that doesn't even, make sense. They have cars that are turning in and out of there all the time. And then down the street, you have Bick and Schick. I mean, 200 and some cars?
My understanding is that the facility across the street has 90 employees, and they don't necessarily all arrive and leave at the same exact moment.
One other question on the traffic. Have you counted the semis and dump trucks and various vehicles that travel up that hill?
I believe we did, but I do not have that information as part of the report.
Thank you.
I know that there's a fair number of tractor trailers coming up the hill.
Mr. Quish.
Again, a traffic question. Did you look at the intersection of US 1 and Bick Drive in your study?
We did not. We went as far as the I-95 ramps. At that point, the volume of traffic from the site would be splitting off, going north and south on the highway, and the volume continuing to Route 1 would be very small in comparison, so we did not follow it that far.
Just an observation, having used that road many times, I've been at that light more than once where you stop at the same red light more than once because there's a lot of traffic coming off, either coming off the highway or just coming from Bick Drive in general. So I think that if we consider that not every car is going to be getting onto the highway, they will go right or left on Naugatuck, and they will go right or left on West Ave, depending on where they're going. So I think that's something that should be considered in the look at what the real true traffic impact is going to be on the neighborhood, as well as that US 1 intersection. That can be very crowded as it is, and if we're adding you know, if we're assuming that people are going to go and do their shopping on US 1 and they're going to go down to the beaches or go to Milford Center or whatever, that is going to be a substantial impact there. I think that should be thought out and looked at.
We, in our analysis, we did assume a certain amount of traffic turning left and right onto Naugatuck Avenue. We did not assume any turn left and right onto West Avenue. We didn't see where there'd be a destination for any significant amount of our traffic. We did have about 20 vehicles continuing down toward Route 1, coming and going both the morning and afternoon peak hours. That represents one additional car every 3 minutes down at Route 1, which we didn't think was a significant change in what's taking place down there, given the volume of traffic that travels down there.
Ms. Servine?
Yes, for the record, could someone please respond to all of the department requests, Engineering, Conservation Commission, Police Commission, Tree Commission, and also the Sewer Commission?
Gene,
Want me to be
are you
specific?
referring to what David was talking about, or?
Yes, I am, but also I have some questions regarding these things, so I thought it might be easier for you to respond to these comments.
I don't think that there was anything that we heard from David's staff report that those departments were looking for that would be a problem as being a condition of approval. The tree alignments, you mentioned something about the Sewer Commission. I don't know what that was.
They wanted water-efficient fixtures of some kind.
Right, well, that was part of their approval, so clearly
Right, that
we
would
would
be
have
the-
to meet that,
The-
right.
The one that stands out particularly to me is the sidewalk issue. I was perplexed that there weren't sidewalks on the site plan to begin with, but apparently the police commission...
Well, again, as with all of the applications that we bring before you, that's in your purview, and if it's made a condition of the approval, it'll be one of your conditions.
I understand that. I'm just curious as to why...
I think because of the topography, especially along Naugatuck Avenue, if you've been to the site, you know that lower portion of the property with the steep drop-off and the really overgrown foliage and whatnot. I don't think that that's an area that really lends itself to having a necessity for a sidewalk, and I think that actually it creates a natural buffer between the other areas. That's why it wasn't shown on the plans, but if it's a condition of approval, it's a condition, but I think clearly it's something that we weren't anticipating or felt that it was necessary.
Thank you.
But the other ones that David mentioned, I mean, there was nothing that really was innocuous that Mr. Friedman would have any problem with.
Mr. Nickel?
I have another question. I believe I heard that the apartments were no children. Did I hear that correctly?
No, not that children wouldn't be allowed. It's just that the natural tendency would be that there wouldn't be children because they're all one-bedroom and studio apartments. And in response to that, Richard also made reference to Cascade Boulevard. Those are all one-bedroom and studio apartments, but there is one resident, obviously she must be in the one-bedroom apartment, who has a young child in there with her.
Has there been any, I didn't see it on the plan, but if there are children, where are the buses going to stop?
I don't think there's going to be a bus stop because I don't think there's going to be any children, but that's something, again, knowing my familiarity with the Board of Education process, if there are going to be children in that building, arrangements would have to be made for a bus to come up to the building.
Well, obviously they can't come into the building, but I'm concerned about the traffic out in the street when they have to board the bus and when they have to come home.
I think that that's a problem that really won't arise.
One more question. What type of system is there in the garage for fire? Is it smoke, water, what?
Hi, Andrew Hennessy for the record. The garage will have a fire sprinkler system as well as smoke detection. And that will be all connected to a full fire alarm system in the entire building. So if something happens in the basement, the alarm in the entire building will go off, as well as call the central, notify the fire department.
I have one other question here. Was everybody in that area informed? I mean, were notifications sent out in regards to the building, to the neighborhood, to the fact that you may be tapping into a high pressure or moving a high pressure gas main? I mean, were they notified that something could happen if...
This public hearing was noticed the way any other special permit application was noticed. There was a placard and there was a notice placed in the newspaper.
But nothing went to the neighborhood, except I saw the placard out there, no problem there. But I'm concerned about, did anyone notify the businesses in that area that may be using this high-pressure gas main, that there could be some kind of a problem along the way, or?
Well, first of all, the answer to the first question is no. And as a comment to the follow-up, I don't think anything has been presented to you tonight that would lead you or any other board member to believe that would be a problem. When Steve was going through the site plan, he talked about how there's the right-of-way for the pipeline, and I've handled these matters before. That's a very detailed process that you have to go through before you do any even disturbance of the land, much less any cutting into it. And Steve can go into that even greater detail, but there were no notices sent to any of the businesses in the area that there would be any potential problem with touching the gas pipeline.
I noticed that the pipeline as an entrance on Bick Drive, that there's a dumpster that's going to be sitting right over top of it.
Steve Trinkus. Yes, the gas line, it's an Algonquin transmission line. It is not a gas line that you would tap as a business. To provide gas to the building, there is a gas main running east to west on Bick Drive. That is what will be tapped for the building. The Algonquin is their major transmission line through the northeast. The dumpsters are wheeled dumpsters, so they're sitting on top of the pavement, or it's actually a concrete pad for the dumpsters, so they can be moved. And in meeting with Algonquin twice during the design process, they have no problem with pavement being over their line. They have no problem with raising the grade there. They simply do not allow you to cut down. The gas line under Bick Drive is about 20 feet below grade, and then it transitions up to about 5 feet below grade as it comes through this site from Bick Drive through the site to Naugatuck, with the exception of the portion of the parking lot being over the line, simply paving it. There's no other construction activity within the easement area at all. So we're not tapping the line, we're not going to be excavating near it, and they require, prior to any work being done out here, that we have to hire a contractor to excavate test pits under their direct supervision over where the line is to get accurate survey elevations of the line itself, even though we're not digging anywhere near it. Regarding school buses, the driveway, as it can handle your largest fire truck, a school bus can also come in off Bick Drive, go all the way around the building and back out again. And not just a minibus, but a standard school bus. So if there were any children that had to get transported to school, the bus could come onto the site and not be on Bick Drive or Naugatuck, and go back out onto the road also.
Any further questions from the board? Mr. Mead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the traffic My question is, at the intersection of Bick Drive and Naugatuck Avenue, especially in the afternoon, like, 4 or 5 o'clock when subway's getting out in Bick, did they do an analysis of the count of cars there?
During the afternoon peak period, yes.
What did you come up with?
As far as traffic
Well,
volume
I mean,
level.
going through that intersection, I know people that come out of Subway, instead of going towards the thruway, they'll come up Naugatuck Avenue and, or up Bick Drive to Naugatuck Avenue and go left or right. And my question was, if it's going to be a significant amount of traffic, is there any way, or have you talked to the DOT about the timing of that traffic light?
We did a traffic count during the afternoon peak period, 4 to 6, and then from that extrapolated or identified the 1 hour period that had the greatest volume of traffic. Just looking at the numbers, it looks like it looks like about 600 vehicles an hour traveling through that intersection during the afternoon peak hour. We analyzed it for its operating level of service. And during the afternoon peak hour, it's presently operating at a very good level of service B, and will continue to operate at the same level of service. So it's operating very well from a traffic operations perspective.
So the timing of the light wouldn't change anything for the flow?
We're not proposing a change to it, no.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Servine.
I have a question about dumpsters. If I read the site plan correctly, there are 4 dumpsters on site, is that correct? And while you're looking, I have a question for Mr. Sulkus. Is there any kind of a standard for the amount of living space to the number of dumpsters that should be, a ratio between the two?
We don't have one in our regulations, so I don't know what, I probably couldn't answer that. The applicant does have multiple facilities. Again, he's got one here. He's got multiple facilities in Stamford. I'm sure that they could give you an idea of that ratio.
Okay, thank you.
Steve Trinkus for the record. There are 4 dumpsters recycling areas in the parking lot, basically kind of the 4 corners, northwest,
Right.
northeast, southeast, southwest. So you have the garbage dumpster, and then you have other bins for the applicable recycling, and they're all within a fenced-in area, so that when they come to be picked up by the garbage truck, they're wheeled out. The truck lifts them up and, dumps them, puts them back.
I see that. And my question would be, how often will there be a pickup? But I'm wondering about the ratio of residential units to the size of the dumpsters.
I'll have to defer to Richard to answer that question.
Yeah, hi, Richard Friedman for the record. So right up the street, not more than half a mile from here is Golden Hill Apartments, which we've owned since 1967, I believe. That has 42 bedroom units, so, and that has 1 dumpster. So if you divide 257 by 4, that gives you roughly 64, which is 64 bedrooms for 1 dumpster. Golden Hill is 80 bedrooms for 1 dumpster. So yeah, 4 dumpsters is about the right amount. If it needs to be picked up more frequently, it will be picked up more frequently.
Oh, what's the plan now for pickup?
Probably twice a week.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Mr. Mead.
Thank you. I don't know to who, but of the affordable apartments, could you give me the breakdown of which ones are going to be studio, which ones are going to be 1 bedroom, and if they're type A or type B?
Yeah, it's laid out, Ed, on page 2. So there's going to be 63 studio apartments and 194 one-bedrooms.
But they're not all going to be at the affordable value.
Oh, there's going to be 78.
No, but I mean, how many of the studio will be affordable, and how many of the one-bedroom?
20.
10 of each.
Yeah, but those are different income
Right.
levels. Yeah, if you go to page 16 of this book, in the upper right-hand corner, it tells you the designations of the units that are going to be affordable. There's 20 affordable studios. That's 10 of each income level, 10 at 60%, 10 at 80%, and 58 one-bedrooms. Again, a half and half, 29 and 29. 10% of the overall units are Type A. 90% of the units are Type B. These unit designations are generally scattered throughout the building, so about 10% of each one of these, maybe not exactly, but about 10% of each one of these classifications will be Type A and 90% will be Type B.
Okay, thank you. And one other question. Of all the amenities, is there a laundry, coin-operated laundry, anything on property?
Right now, the plan that's in your submission shows two laundry rooms per floor. We may use 2 laundry rooms per floor. We may actually put laundry machines in each individual unit. We actually haven't made that decision yet.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the board? Seeing none, we will open this up to public comment. If you could please follow the following procedure. Approach the podium, clearly state your name and address, spelling your name. Address all comments to the commission. If your comments have been previously presented, please refrain from repeating. Simply say that you're in agreement with what was said previously. State your comments in a clear and succinct manner as possible, and keep your comments to under 3 minutes, please. If anyone is in support of this application, you could approach the podium. Seeing no one in favor, we will take a 2-minute break and then come back if anyone is opposed to the application. Thank you. We're back on the record, and we are in the middle of public comments, and if anyone is opposed to the application, you could please come to the podium.
Good evening. My name is Diane Whitney, W-H-I-T-N-E-Y. I'm from Pullman and Comley, and the address is 90 State House Square in Hartford. I represent Northeast Electronics Corporation, which is located at 455 Bick Drive. And we want to present to you our perspective from having operated at this property for many decades. First, there are 90 employees at Northeast Electronics, as was referred to before. They all come at the same time in the morning and leave at the same time in the afternoon. There are 3 issues that we'd like to tell you about, and we believe they do relate to health and safety, and so will be important for your consideration. And the 3 issues have to do with water pressure, traffic, and the gas line. First, as to water pressure, there is a severe problem with water pressure at Northeast Electronics. The pressure is simply not adequate, despite years of trying to fix it so it was adequate. The only way that the water even works at Northeast Electronics is through a series of supplemental pumps that operate at the facility. And in fact, when the pumps are not operating, the toilets will not even flush. So when you're then talking about putting in 257 residential units across the street, we would submit to you that it doesn't matter how efficient the appliances are in those units, there is almost certain to be a serious problem with water pressure. As far as traffic is concerned, this is a heavy industrial area.
the traffic that is already on the street, as was alluded to earlier, is heavy industrial traffic, very large trucks. To put them on the street in conjunction with 257 residential users seems like an exceedingly uncomfortable, if not to say unsafe, combination of traffic. And there have been traffic problems in this vicinity. In fact, the light at the intersection of Bick Drive and Naugatuck has been adjusted in recent years to make up or try and alleviate some of the problems with people going up Bick Drive and onto Naugatuck, because the volume was too great and the wait was too long. Also, the plan provides for 257 units, but 322 parking spaces with a possible additional 41 parking spaces. So you could, under this plan, be talking about 363 cars. That's a lot of cars to add to this already busy street where the traffic is, at this time, heavily industrial. Also, one can assume there will be guests visiting this property too. So the 363 cars is perhaps a minimum number of cars per day at this site. I rarely disagree with Mr. Hilson's work, and so I don't disagree with his conclusion that it apparently is unsafe to exit this property and turn left. It seems to me that usually when in a land use matter, when you restrict a turn in one direction or another, there is an alternative for you to get in the direction where you can't really turn. In this situation, there is not. If you can't turn left exiting this property, you simply can't turn left. There's no way to get around that unless you go right and hook a U-turn and then go down, which would be awkward, particularly given a heavy level of traffic on this road. So there's an admission to you that the traffic situation at this property is unsafe as planned. As far as the gas line, this is, you probably already know that since you've been in Milford for some time, but this is a very large gas line. We believe it's 32 inches, which is very large. It's an important fuel source for the area, and a significant issue from a safety perspective. Generally, development near this line is discouraged. To put a dense residential development so near, really on top of this gas line, seems like a very ill-advised way to go from a safety and health perspective. We wonder if there is a history of such high-density residential development so close to this or a comparable gas line. All of this, and I'm trying to keep to your 3-minute maximum, all of this is to suggest to you that this is not an appropriate location for high-density residential use. This is an industrial area where the industrial uses are not compatible with high-density residential. And we ask that you consider the water pressure, the traffic, and the gas line as issues that will impact this development and would perhaps suggest to you that this is not the best place to put high-density residential. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else opposed to the application?
Hi, my name is Pacatieris, and I live in the neighborhood. And
Could you just, ma'am, do you mind just spelling your first and last name for the record?
Patricia, Patricia, Gutierrez, G like in George, UT like in Tom, IERREZ like in zebra.
Thank you, and we won't count that towards your 3 minutes.
I live in the area. I live right off of West Avenue, and I travel that property, that area all the time. I worked at Bick for 39 years. I traveled to Bick. We've had snowstorms. You can't get up that hill. Where are these people going to park if they can't get up the hill? That's number one. Number 2 is the gas line. It runs right through there. Number 3, I just can't see the cars and the trucks that come up. You'd have to be there one day and just watch. If there's an accident on that thruway, God help you. You'll never get to the Boston Post Road. It's impossible. And if there's 300 and something more cars, you're going to be stuck there forever. I mean, it's just unreal. It really is. The area is not made for a lot of traffic. And if you're there in the morning when the kids go to school, you're not going to get through either. And that's like between 8 and 8:30. The traffic is on West Avenue and Schoolhouse, Bick Drive is atrocious. I mean, I don't know where he got his timing or where he was, but I can't see him being at Bick in that area. First of all, another thing, it really doesn't probably mean anything to you, but Bick did not own that company in the beginning. Norden Kite did. Bick came in there in 1964. And that building has been there long before 1964. I just hope for the property, people that own them, their houses there and everything, to be able to get in and out of that area. 300 and something cars going in and out is going to be terrible. I've never done this before. I've never had to come to a meeting. I think we should have been notified, which we weren't. I saw an article in the paper about this big that I happened to glance at, and that's why I'm here. So I would appreciate if they do, I think if they have another meeting, I think they should let the people in the neighborhood know so that they can come and let them know what they feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else opposed to the application?
I'm going to try. Douglas Labrecque. It's Labrecque. I live at 311 West Rutland Road, right around the corner. First, I have to agree with the water pressure. I've even been in touch with Regional Water, and they say that, yes, that area has low water pressure. They've admitted to it. One of the other things was a guarantee that there was going to be no school children in that building. Otherwise, we're already having issues with the school system in Milford. Now you're going to have some number more students into the local grade schools that are there. I think the traffic study was a bit flawed because people want to go to Sikorsky, as they suggested. The best way to go through Sikorsky is to take the Merritt Parkway. Merritt Parkway cut-through is West Rutland Road. I don't need any more traffic on that road. It's already busy enough at the times when the business is let out. It can be difficult to get out of the driveway. So now we're going to have some 300 residential, even if you take a third of them that want to go south on the Parkway, they're going to have issue. And the other thing was traffic safety. You're going to have all these people now living in that area, and they're going to want to go out for a walk. They're going to want to get out. They're not going to be able to walk on that road. It's going to be way too busy for them. I've lived there for 7 years. I've commuted past that area for 27 years. So I know what the traffic area is. And I think that the 322 parking is wrong. Like one of the members said, it should be twice. It should be 2 cars per unit. So that's going to be over 500 possible cars that can park there. I don't agree with having this building. If they wanted to put single-family homes in there, I'm fine with that. But having in an area of single-family homes, now to try and put 257-unit apartment, it's not appropriate for the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else opposed to the application? Seeing no one else, the applicant has a chance for rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, it's again, something that I want to stress is that At the time that the roadways in this area were put in, there was a plant that had 1,500 people working there each day, 3 shifts. So that plant's now gone. Whatever traffic needed to be accommodated when that plant was in operation far exceeded what my client is proposing on this property. Secondly, we appeared here tonight with a traffic expert. We can hear anecdotal comments relative to traffic, but we came here tonight with a traffic expert who gave you counts and gave you conclusions of his findings. You also have the police department. The police department reviewed these plans. The police department issued a memorandum in support of the plans, specifically as it relates to public health, safety, the sight lines. There was also comment, again, going back and forth about school children. Obviously, there can be no denial of having school-age children in this building, but the practical effect of it, and as Mr. Friedman had said, as it relates to Cascade, is that there will not be children. We didn't make the comment that they would be forbidden in the building, but the practical effect of people, young professionals, young workers in studio apartments and one-bedroom apartments, the likelihood, the great likelihood would be that there would not be any children there. As it relates to the Algonquin gas line, again, council raised that as a safety issue. It's not a safety issue. We made it replete through the record, through Mr. Trinkus's presentation to you, that there's specific rules and guidelines that you have to go through in terms of doing any work whatsoever within the easement area of the Algonquin gas line. And the work that's going to be done on site would just be paving work, it would be site work, there would be no excavation through that area. That in and of itself would be a safety hazard and it wouldn't be permitted. So that, again, I dispute those comments. And lastly, as it relates to the water pressure, quite honestly, we don't know the situation as it relates to Northeast Electronics piping or the piping in the street. This building is going to be constructed. Okay, this building is going to be constructed with regard to the building codes, and Steve can address the water pressure maybe a little bit more. But again, it's a comment that's been raised, but there's been no material evidence supplied saying that the construction of this building is going to have a negative effect on it. There may be some additional piping work that may need to be made off-site to alleviate that, but that's something that would have to be addressed. But Steve, if you wanted to make a further comment on that.
Yeah, just a couple comments on a couple points. One, the actual gas line is located a minimum of 70 feet from the building, so the building is not anywhere close to the gas line. So there's a large separation distance, and again, Algonquin does permit exactly what we're proposing here to be done over their lines. Regarding the sidewalks from the site on Bick Drive in Naugatuck, a sidewalk could be installed on Bick from the entrance down to the intersection with Naugatuck Avenue. However, the steep slope at the base of our property along Naugatuck pretty much precludes a sidewalk. It's a fairly steep bank that comes there, and you'd have a lot of excavation and tree clearing to put a sidewalk along that section of Naugatuck, but you could go from the driveway down to Bick. Regarding the water pressure issue, if necessary, we can put water tanks on the roof of the building where the water comes into the building, goes up by pumps to the water, and then because of the elevation difference, the building is served by a pressure head of water to provide adequate pressure within the building. So even if the low pressure is in the line itself in the road, we can boost that up with a pump to the roof if it is an issue. We're not proposing them, but if it becomes an issue, that's the way to provide adequate pressure for the building itself. No, and it wouldn't affect any building at all, because again, the in a water line, there's capacity. It's just that Regional Water or Aquarian, whatever the case may be, they may not have a booster pump for that line to raise the pressure up. But the water's in the line, it's just a matter of it going from point A to B. So if we did water tanks, it's not going to affect the flow across the street or to any other building that's served by that line.
Thank you. Anything else from the applicant? So how this works is those in opposition now get a chance to rebut the rebuttal, and then the applicant will get one final chance if there's any rebuttal. Seeing none, that will end the public comment section. Any questions from the board? Staff?
I have a question for the applicant, actually for Mr. Trinkas. If you're going to be contemplating the installation of rooftop water tanks, you're going to re-engineer the building to withstand the weight of those tanks?
You would have to, well, more of a question for Andrew, but yes, in general terms, yes, you would bring necessary columns up to support the water tanks to carry the weight of the water load down to the foundation. That's what you would do.
So at what point in the process, assuming you're, let's say for the sake of argument you're approved, at what point in the process would you determine whether or not you're going to need those water tanks?
I think it would be, we would talk to the Regional Water Authority to get to what is the particular issue with low pressure there and why it's occurring. And then based on that, if there's other solutions or if tanks are necessary, then when Andrew provides the construction plans, they would have the necessary detailing for the tanks.
Mr. Quish.
So the police report indicated that they did request sidewalks. I do know the site, and it would be difficult, but not impossible, to excavate, even if you needed a retaining wall to put something on Naugatuck Avenue.
Along a portion of Naugatuck, it's impossible where we have our detention basin because our berm for our detention basin...
I'm sorry, can you speak into the mic?
Oh, I'm sorry. Along the northern section of Naugatuck, closer to the intersection of Bick, where our stormwater detention basin is, that is right at the base of the slope, and our berm actually goes right to my property line, and that's basically a raised mound, so I cannot get rid of that because that's the stormwater basin. And the steep slope comes down, so we're already, the only location for this basin is at the bottom of the slope, and it's forcing us to regrade the slope going back up, but I cannot put a sidewalk where my berm exists.
If you use a retaining wall to hold the berm in place, then you would have room for a sidewalk.
Not with the basin, no, you would not. If it was a regraded slope, you might, but in this case for a berm, you do not have that room. You do not want to have an above-grade wall and have theoretically water ponding behind it. That's not a good design.
So then, in order to do the sidewalk, you'd have to re-engineer the water system.
You wouldn't. You require significantly more site work to do that because right now the basin is located at the bottom of the slope where there is a very flat saddle, but we're still already regrading the slope. So if the basin moved to the west, I'm doing a significant amount more clearing and regrading of that. You're disturbing more area than you need to.
Ms. Servine.
Yes, we've heard seemingly some very serious problems about water pressure on the gas line. Would you be amenable to requesting, is it Algonquin and the Regional Water Authority to submit something in writing to this board regarding your proposal?
I can speak to Algonquin because I've met with them twice, and they were provided with these plans in April of last year before they were filed with the town with a specific request if you had any comments to get back to me before we're filing. And the engineer had called me at some point in late April and said, no, the changes we made, we're fine with them. We do not have a written memo, but they had the full set of plans that you have. So
I know I, for one, I don't know about the rest of them, would like to see that in print also.
We could ask them,
All right.
but they did not. They were, they had requested certain changes from our initial design. We made all the changes that they requested, and they
If
had
we
no...
could just see that, that would be
Yeah,
helpful.
they had no additional comments.
And also the issue with the water pressure.
We could reach out to Regional Water. I was not aware of a pressure issue, but we can reach out to them, obviously.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the board? Seeing none, should we keep the record open just for the water pressure and the gas line issue?
That's what I would
Mr.
say.
Quish?
If we're going to keep the record open, I'd like to see some traffic data for the intersection of the Post Road and Bick Drive. I think that's really going to be a real problem. It already is a problem, and with a lot more cars there. I mean, if we can get some data there, it might shed some light on what this development is going to do to the traffic in that area.
Attorney Lynch, is that something you want to provide? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Hilson can get that. We were just discussing whether he can get that before the next meeting or not, so.
And is that something that can be done for the next
He
meeting?
doesn't know. We'll endeavor to do it. If it's not, then it would have to go over.
So should we keep the record open just for those three specific issues? Anyone on the board have any opinion? Okay. Then we'll, yes.
Regarding the additional information at Bick Drive and Route 1, as I indicated before, we anticipate only one car every 3 minutes being added to that location during the morning peak and afternoon peak. I'm guessing, without knowing the numbers, that you have at least 1,000, if not 2,000 cars an hour traveling through that intersection. The volume of traffic that we're adding to that location is so diminutive that it's not going to affect anything.
Is that all you're going to provide on that? That's
I'm
fine
just
if that's
saying-
all you want to do. I just, for
I'm
knowing
saying-
for next meeting, are you going to provide anything in writing, or you want to stand by what you just said?
We can attempt to get counts between now and then and do an analysis. I can't guarantee we can get it by early February.
Well, then we'll keep the record open for those three specific issues, Mr. Veen.
I'd have another request regarding the sidewalks. Could we have our city engineer, Mr. Wassmer, take a look at that and also write an evaluation of the sidewalk situation?
I can ask him.
Attorney Lynch, I have a question for you. How would the sidewalk issue relate to an 830G application? Meaning, if we make it a condition of approval, does it have to affect health and safety?
No, the overall approval, the health and safety is on a denial. So the short answer is you can make conditions on an approval, but we're submitting for the record that we've, especially on Naugatuck Avenue, that the sidewalks really are impossible to put in. Now, Gene has asked for Gary to review that, and that's something that he certainly can do between now and the next meeting. I mean, we're standing by the proposition that we feel that that's not necessary.
And that's what I was asking. If you do not want to do it, what is our standard for requiring it, if any standard?
For the record, Attorney Mark Brantz, B-R-A-N-S-E. I do a lot of affordable housing appeals. Conditions of approval can be imposed by, and this is true of any application under 830G, conditions of approval can be imposed to address a substantial adverse health or safety impact. So making it a condition of approval doesn't eliminate the need to establish that it is a substantial health and safety issue. The other thing I would just note is that under the case of Buttermilk Farms versus Planning and Zoning Commission, which is now about 5 years old. Local land use commissions can't require sidewalks in any development, not subdivisions, not anything. Now, the applicant has offered sidewalks along Big Drive where it's feasible, but it's actually not something that a commission can require in any event.
And that's why I asked the question. I mean, we may get a report that says sidewalks could be put up there, but we may not have the authority to require them. So I was simply just trying to get a standard for the record.
That's correct. Under 830G, you still have that burden of proof that it's a substantial adverse impact on health or safety. And my understanding is that there aren't sidewalks anywhere in this area, at least along these streets. So it's hard to know what they would connect with. One of the difficulties is you don't want a sidewalk to lead people to somewhere that then just stops.
Ms. Servine.
There actually are sidewalks on each side from the Naugatuck and Bick that join the property. There are sidewalks already in place on the adjoining property. And I guess I could make a case for the safety issue, but nonetheless, I would still like to see our city engineer's evaluation.
We'll keep the record open for those 4 very specific issues: the gas pipe,
the water,
the
and
water,
Gary Wasmer's
and sidewalks. Mr. Quish.
And again, we did just receive this today, so I'd like to be able to read it, and if I have a question on it, I'd like to be able to ask it as well.
Okay, well then that's everything.
Well, I mean, it's what's in here. I mean, I don't know what's in here. I didn't get it until now. I didn't open it yet.
Fair enough, but that's their entire presentation.
Well, there's data in here that might be unclear, that I might need a question answered.
I don't mind one way or the other. I just want to make sure we all know what we're keeping open. So,
I mean,
if you want to just keep the record open.
We will keep the record open.
So you have time to digest the information that was given to you this evening.
Yeah. We'll keep the entire record open, and we will meet again at the next meeting.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Can I ask when's the next meeting?
The next meeting, February 3rd, 7:30.
The second or the third?
We're just going to double check if.
February 3rd. February 3rd.
The next meeting is February 3rd, 7:30. The next item on the agenda is liaison reports. Anyone with a report? Mr. Mead?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one note on the Police Commission. This year, Milford Police Department is celebrating their 100th-year anniversary.
Are they having a party?
Yes, they're having a party, and they're putting special decals on the police cars, and all the police officers are getting new badges. Yep.
Next item on the agenda is Regulation Subcommittee. Mr. Grant?
At this time, we're reviewing several additional regulations, and we're going to be setting up some time with the city attorney's office to go through what we've submitted to them already.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the 1/6/2015 minutes. Anyone like to make a motion or have a discussion? Mr. Quish? Motion?
Move to approve the minutes.
I will second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is the chair's report. The only thing I have to report is I did a boundary line adjustment that Mr. Sulkus will explain in further detail.
Yes, the chair approved a lot line adjustment that involves the following 3 properties that are linked together: 1 Spencer Street, 3 Beach Avenue, also known as 3 Spencer Street, and 11 Spencer Street. So that was the first Mylar that the chair signed off on. The second one was a Mylar for West Avenue at Innsbrook Street involving map 32, block 364, lot 1.
Thank you. And I know Mr. Griffith wanted to address the board, and there's also a staff report So, Mr. Griffith, if you could please approach the podium, and then we will end with the staff report.
Thank you. I guess in follow-up to the discussions earlier about the procedures that we've been implementing regarding specifically CAM reviews and the reporting to this commission by staff, what we've been doing, not just in the past meeting, but in the past several months, is Mr. Harris, the zoning enforcement officer, has been, in many cases, primarily on CAM reviews, reviewing applications, preparing a formal written summary, which then is passed on to Mr. Selkis for presentation to this board. And so again, the presentation tonight is really nothing new as far as a procedural matter goes. Tonight you heard two applications for CAM review. One application you put off because of inadequate information, and the other application was passed, I guess, unanimously. Is that true? I did ask you, I mean, I'm reading Stephen's administrative summary report that was submitted to me last week and then forwarded on to Mr. Selkis for a presentation. And I'd ask you to try to identify which one of your applications tonight this one comes from. It reads as follows. A signed and stamped site plan and signed and stamped foundation plan by an engineer and scaled elevation and floor plans shall be submitted to the Planning and Zoning Department and the Building Department for review prior to the issuance of any permit. That was the concluding paragraph of one of his summaries. And again, I'd ask you to tell me which one is appropriate for taking action on versus putting off. Because
I think
it's a
what
trick
happened
question. The answer is they both read identical.
I think what happened in the second application is after the report, he submitted everything that he needed to. So that's why we decided on one and not the other. But
Again, I'm familiar with what's been submitted on both applications, and I don't think it was presented to this board as to what was asked for and what was still pending for submission. I mean, they both read that the fire department review is not on file. Again, I guess that's what I'm trying to do is clarify. If we're going to establish procedures that are consistently going to come to this board with specific information as required by the zoning regulations, I guess I'm just trying to make sure that I understand what this board is going to be requiring. Because, as I said, from the two applications that came in tonight, I saw them as being identical. And the comments that were given were obviously different and unique to each project, but the scope of the review and the content of the information that was given was essentially the same. So I guess that's what if I am going to come back and clarify to this board what our procedures are going to be, I guess I'd like to just get clarification from you guys. Thank you.
thank you. Ms. Servine?
Can I just respond to one thing, Mr. Gibbons? I believe, as I understood it, there was an engineering report that wasn't with the Shell Avenue project, but, I think for the board, there has been some confusion with the changes in personnel, and we're used to having someone, here, as Emmeline was in the past, to answer our questions as well, but there seemed to be a lot of confusion, as I witnessed it, as to what the process is now compared to what it was in the past. So I think there's an issue that may be needed, at least from my perspective, of clarity about who does what and how and et cetera.
And I don't want to speak for the entire board, but I think what we're looking for is for you guys to tell us what a complete application is, and for everyone to be on the same page. Mm-hmm. That's all we want. I mean, we can't have one person saying all you need is A, B, and C, and then somebody saying you need A through F, because then what do? We don't know. So
I think that's what I'm saying. The one person that said you've got A, B, and C, and then prior to you issuing a permit, we need D, E, and F, that person was Stephen Harris. And what I'm saying is I don't think Dave correctly presented to the board tonight what was stated by Mr. Harris in both administrative summaries.
May I just comment on that last comment? If you look at the staff reports from Mr. Harris at the beginning of the reports, he has basically a checkoff list of what was submitted to the board, to the application, and the two applications differed. One had that information, which was the second one that the board voted on. The first one did not have the engineering, the public works, and the fire marshal. So, you know, I asked the applicant that question. He didn't have it there. He did not have the engineering report. So I'm not going to sit here and be blamed for misrepresenting anything in these reports because I did not.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. The last item on the agenda is the staff report.
I have nothing further to say this evening.
Thank you. We will officially adjourn.